As a leader, it is a fundamental requirement that you are able to lead yourself. Able to keep your head when all about you are losing theirs, and blaming it on you, of course, because you're the leader, so it's your fault. So self-leadership is the cornerstone of all leadership. It is the foundation upon which your ability to lead others, to lead teams, to lead organisations, to lead the world is built. So what is self-leadership? How good are you at leading yourself? Well, a few questions for you. When was the last time you really decided to make a change to the way you did something, to the way you behave? Perhaps it was a New Year's resolution, or perhaps it was something you were going to do at work after you'd been on a course. How long did that last? What got in the way? Was there ever a time when you found yourself going, I wasn't going to do that again. And there I am, I've just done it. Right, I won't do it again. Or perhaps you're sitting in a meeting and there's a great conversation going on and you're in there, you're listening, and then you have a great idea and you sit forward and you go, and you look around and you go, oh no, actually, I'm not going to say anything. I think, no, they might take the piss or whatever, I'm just going to sit back. And 2 minutes later, somebody else comes in and says something and everybody goes, wow, what a great point, what a fantastic question. And you're sitting there and you go, no, that was my question, I was going to say that. Ever done that? Very probably. Most of us have several times during our careers. So these are ways we hold ourselves back. These are things that get in the way of us leading ourselves, the ability to lead others. They are aspects of fear, on concern, fear about what others may think, fear about making a fool of ourselves, fear about making a mistake. And these fears we are going to explore in many ways over this session and the subsequent sessions, looking at fear, because it's fear that gets in the way of us maintaining our focus. It's fear that stops us fulfilling ourselves in our leadership potential and therefore enabling others to fulfill themselves. So how do we know that we're suffering from fear? What actually gets in the way? What I'd like you to do is just pause the video for a moment and think of those times when you've really decided that you are going to do something, you are going to make a point, you are going to behave in a certain way, and yet it hasn't happened. And you walked out of the meeting or the conversation or the instance or the environment and you've been doing what we call kicking yourself. Oh, why did I do that again? Why didn't I do that? Wow, I wish I'd said this. Just think of a few of those instances. Pause the video and write them down. Excellent. So now you've got a little bit, you've reminded yourself of what it feels like when you hit those inner buffers, those restrictions. Now we're going to talk about a chap called Tim Gallwey. Tim Gallwey wrote some great books, and the one that's probably most relevant for this is called The Inner Game of Work. But if you play tennis or you play golf, he also wrote stuff about the inner game of golf and the inner game of tennis, so it can help you with that too. Now, Tim Gallwey was a sports coach that began to bring some of those techniques into business. And he wrote an equation all about performance, and here we're talking about leadership performance. And that equation was big P equals little p minus little I. My sort of equation, very simple. Big P stands for performance. Equals, little p is for potential, minus, and the little I stands for interference. Now, when you think of those examples that you've just written down, think of what got in the way. What stopped you? It's probably a thought, it was probably something somebody did. And essentially, if you think of that interference, you can think there are two sorts of interference. There is what we call external interference. And that's very simple to recognise, happens all the time. And the way you recognise that you are suffering from external interference is because you say to yourself, if only. If only this traffic were moving more quickly, I wouldn't be late. If only they got that thing on time, I wouldn't be in trouble. If only I had more time, I'd be able to do all this stuff that everybody's asking. If only they, if only he, if only she, if only things were different, things would be better. And that's how we know we're suffering from external interference. The thing there, of course, is if we're constantly saying if only, we're going off into a fantasy. As a leader, what we need to deal with is what is. So this external interference distracts us from what's actually happening that we need to deal with. There's another sort of interference, of course, and it's this sort of interference that you probably identified when you were thinking of those times when you sat back in your chair at those meetings. And that, of course, is internal interference, self-doubt, fear, questioning. How do you know that you're suffering from this internal interference? What tells you that that internal interference is getting in the way? Well, that, of course, is your inner voice. So how do you know that you're suffering from that internal interference? Perhaps there's some tension. Perhaps you're looking around. But I think that you probably identified, when you were thinking of those instances that you wrote down before, that one of the key things is what you're saying to yourself, that inner voice. Oh, careful. Oh, last time you did this. Oh, be careful. Oh, they'll think, are you sure? Have you ever done this? This little voice gets in the way. And that is the signal. That is the manifestation of self-doubt, of the fear, of concern, of the fear that holds us back from doing what we know we want to do, even when there's no external interference. That inner voice, we tend to believe, we've been taught that that inner voice, wherever it comes from, is real and has power. Actually, it's very, very easy to change what we say to ourselves. It's very, very easy to prove to ourselves that that inner voice that we believe to be so powerful is actually really under our control if we want it to be, if we choose to make it so. And as leaders, we choose what we wish to do at all times. So now we're going to look at an exercise that you can do. You will need a partner here, either a colleague or a friend, to help you with this, to show how powerful that inner voice can be, but how easy it is to control it.
So I'm going to ask you to look into the distance way out there, just above eye level, and in a moment, Sue, I'm going to ask you to say these three words: strong, powerful, firm. I'm going to ask you to say them out loud, repeatedly, like a loop, yes? When you're doing that, your arm will be out. I'm going to ask you to put your arm out the side, and you can imagine a strong red colour or something like that going down your arm. And when I push down, you're going to resist.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Really clear. Looking in the distance, Sue, ready? Arm out to the side. That's it, really good. Strong, powerful, firm.
Strong, powerful, firm. Strong, powerful, firm. Strong, powerful, firm.
Excellent. Even louder and stronger.
Strong, powerful, firm.
Get ready to resist.
Strong, powerful, firm.
Strong, powerful, firm. That's it. Ready,
Strong,
steady.
powerful, firm.
Strong, powerful, firm.
firm. Strong, powerful, firm. Strong, powerful.
That's great. Shake your arm out. This time exactly the same, except I want you to say weak, miserable, poor. Weak, miserable, poor. And imagine a dull grey colour going down your arm, okay? Arm out to the side. Ready, steady. Weak, miserable, poor. Weak, miserable, poor. Weak, miserable, poor. And get ready to resist. Weak, miserable, poor.
Weak,
Miserable, poor. Okay. What happened?
You're pushing harder.
finger. I was using force. I was pushing with my finger. So there was some resistance. Okay. Never leave anybody in weak, miserable, poor. What happened for you?
A notable difference in the strength of my arm when I was saying disempowering words.
Yeah, notable difference. Even when you don't believe the words, just by saying them, and you were trying to resist every time?
Yeah.
You're trying to resist every time. Okay, so Sue has direct experiential evidence of this, and you don't. So we're going to change that. So in the next few minutes, the invitation is to pair up and run the exercise. Two things to remember. First is only push down when your partner has started saying whatever it is they're saying. When they touch down, push down there. So they want to be already be affecting them rather than start pushing and then bring it. So do it that way. And do the strong, do the weak, and then do the strong again. Yes? So don't leave anybody in weak, miserable, poor.
Firm, strong, powerful, firm.
Strong, powerful, firm. I did just use one finger the second time. No, I know.
Weak, miserable, poor. Weak, miserable, poor.
So, now you've seen how to do that exercise, and I'd like you to work with a friend or a colleague to do it for each other. Because those people in that video now have direct experiential evidence that it doesn't even matter what words you say. Somebody asks you to stand up and hold your arm out and say stupid stuff. But the words you say have a direct, immediate and significant effect upon your physical, emotional and mental presence. So working with a colleague, just a couple of important points about the exercise. Really allow yourself, when you're saying strong, powerful, firm, or weak, miserable, poor, to really shout and enjoy and use and experience those words. A second thing is if you're the person who's going to push down on the arm, don't touch the person's arm until they're really saying with rhythm those words. Okay? And when you come to say weak, miserable, poor, say them with just as much power, just as much energy, just as much belief as you said strong, powerful, firm. So welcome back. What did you experience? Assuming, of course, that you've done the exercise. And this is a very important point. If you've done that exercise, great. Excuse me for a minute. But if you haven't, this is where the rubber hits the road. What we're talking about here is the experience of leadership. Although we may have a bit of theory, we may talk about models. The key thing here is your personal experience. How you will lead as an individual, most effectively and most powerfully, is different to how I or anybody else would lead, most effectively and most powerfully. So when we have exercises like this, it's very important that you take the time, that you give yourself the respect and the value to take the time and do the exercise, because your experience is what's important for you. We have a rule, it's a universal rule if you like. It's called the Wiggy Wig rule. And that stands for what you give is what you get. What you give to this, the respect you give to it, and therefore the respect you give to yourself and to your own development, will determine what you get out of it. So if you haven't done that exercise, take a moment now to have a go. So, now you have that direct experiential evidence that it doesn't really matter what you say to yourself, but the words have a direct, immediate, significant impact on your physical, mental and emotional presence. This is important because a lot of the time we don't even hear what we're saying to ourselves, but it's having that impact. It's creating that inner environment, that inner relationship to what we're doing that determines whether we step forward or hold back. Some people call it the song we sing to ourselves. Many of us in our families have someone in our family who sings us the poor me song. Poor me. Why does it always happen to me? I try, but it never works. Recognise someone like that? Or here's another song that is very popular with people. I'm responsible. If I don't do it, it'll never work. If I don't do it, it'll never work. Give it to me, I'll do it. I'll tell you what to do. Another great song that people sing to themselves. Determines the whole of their lives. Oh, why is everybody else? But it's a song. What song do you sing to yourself when you get up in the morning? Is it a, oh, what a beautiful morning? Or is it a, oh, just one more hour. Just one more hour, please. Imagine how that sets you up for the day, knowing what you now know about how strong the impact of that inner voice, that inner song is on what you do. So next time, tomorrow morning when you're in the shower, choose your song. And choose the song, choose the words you are going to say, the theme song for your day ahead. And make sure that it's a song that allows you to step forward rather than holds you back. Have a go. See what happens.